When you start to learn Git, you might confuse Git and GitHub. And in this video, I want to clarify what the differences are, okay? Git and GitHub are completely different things. Git is the technology that we use. Git is what allows us to track our code, a source code management system, okay? It is a way for us to keep track of our code. What's changed, what's new, when was it changed, who changed it. A lot of people can be working on the same project. With Git, we know exactly which part came from who. Okay, so that is the technology that we're using is Git. And when we learn Git, we're learning the technology. Then there are a lot of different brands, right? I use the word brand to make it easy to understand. GitHub is a brand. GitLab is a brand. Bitbucket is a brand. Okay, those three are that I'm familiar with, I've used, and there's probably tons more, but those are pretty popular. Obviously, you've heard of GitHub. GitHub is really the most popular one. It's been around for a long time. Nowadays, GitLab is getting popularity. GitLab does a lot more than just store code. And Bitbucket is Atlassian product. If you have a JIRA account or Confluence account, you have that account. So I just want to show you those things, okay? So here I have three of them pulled up. I just created just a sample project on all three. So what we're looking at here is GitHub. You can look at the URL, says GitHub. So in GitHub, you can create a repository. So this is a repository. If I was to click on my account, you will see a bunch of, those are actually, some of them are mine, some are not mine. If I click on repositories, it looks like right now I have 20 repositories. Each one of those is a repository. It just means like a folder. You can think of it, let's say you have Google Drive and you put one of your projects into a folder on Google Drive. You put another project in another folder into Google Drive and another project in another folder in Google Drive. So when you go to Google Drive, you have a bunch of project folders. Each folder represents, a project. Exact same thing here, except, you can track it. It's more powerful here. So each of the repositories you see here is a collection of code. It's like one folder. When you check out this repository into your local machine, this is a remote. When you go to github.com, this is a remote. You make a copy of each one of those one at a time to your local machine, and they show up as folders and files, right? Each one of these projects is a folder. Then you make changes in that folder, whatever files you have and subfolders and everything. So this is a place where we store our code. We basically upload it. The way we upload it is using Git. Git is a technology we use to upload our code into GitHub and keep track of. So GitHub is a brand. I believe Microsoft owns it. Then let's look at another one. This is GitLab. They both have the word Git in their names, so it's a little bit confusing, but they're completely different. Totally different companies, totally unrelated. GitLab is actually a publicly traded company, GTLB. I think that's a ticker for the stock market in the US. So this is another project, just like we saw here. So all of those are repositories. This is the one I created. This is public. You can literally, I created it as a public. If you can see these other ones, they're private. Well, this one is private, this is public. That means you can access it. You can literally pause the video and go to this URL if you want, and you will see it. There's nothing in it. There's only one file. I didn't add files. So later on, basically throughout the rest of the course, this is what we're going to do. We're going to create a repository in one of those sites. We're going to use GitHub for this one because it's popular. And we create a repository like this and we add files to it. And we learn how to use Git to add files, how to update files, to delete files, basically to control our work in this repository. So we're going to create few other repositories, not this one. We're going to create another one, few of them, as we practice how to use Git. So this is one project. If I go to GitLab, it's a completely different brand, completely different company. This is another project. I created this example GitLab, example app GL for GitLab. This is just a name I came up with. The URL is in the URL. We'll take this URL here or this link and we use it to download the stuff. We can also, I've never actually used a download option here, but in GitHub, in GitHub, there is a download option. But if we're using Git, if you learn Git, you don't want to download. You actually want to clone. Use the Git command. If you don't know Git, this is the only way you can get it, but you can't track it. You just download it, but you don't really track it. So this is another brand. I just want to show you. So if I go to my homepage, you'll see a bunch of projects here. The same thing. This one is broken up into groups. You can basically group up your projects, but each one of those you see here are all my code for different projects. So it might be material for my courses, it might be a personal project, might be a website I built. All the code goes as a project here. This is a completely different brand. The word Git is in the name, so it's a little confusing. Another popular one is Bitbucket. Bitbucket is another brand that uses Git. So GitHub is a brand, GitLab is a brand, Bitbucket is a brand. All those three are free, where they have a paid version and a free version. And for us, free version is more than enough. You need to pay for it when you have a lot of people working on the same project to collaborate. Then a lot of the features become important to pay for. So this is another example. This is again another repository I've created. I just created it for this video. Again, this one has two different files. This git ignore file is a special file. We'll talk about it. This readme.md, this is the stuff we see here. All of this here is rendered because it's inside of this file here. So this is one project. Again, if I click on Bitbucket, I will see a bunch of my other projects. I haven't used Bitbucket in a long time. I've been using GitHub, then I've been using GitLab. I love GitLab because it has CI/CD built into it. GitHub does too, but I've been using GitLab quite often, and eventually I'm going to create a course on GitLab. I love GitLab. So Bitbucket, I haven't used it for a while, but it's free, and I just want to make the point, those are just brands, and you can choose to use each one of them. It doesn't matter which one you use. Once you check it out locally, the way you use Git is exactly the same. It makes no difference at all. But once you start to work on the remote, let's say you make changes here and you push it up to the remote to save it, then the UI makes a difference. Like in GitLab, they call it merge requests. In GitHub, they call it pull request, even though it means the same thing. But the UI actually looks a little different, so you got to get familiar with it. The idea is all the same. So if the UI looks different, it will take you just a minute or two to actually figure out how to do whatever you need to do. Usually create a pull request and merge it, okay? So the point of this video is Git is a technology, GitHub is a brand, GitLab is a brand, Bitbucket is a brand that uses Git. They all use Git as a technology. So I want to make sure you know that you distinguish those two. So when you're following the rest of the course, I'm using GitHub, but if you say I want to use GitLab, go for it. Use GitLab. It makes no difference. Or you can do one of the projects in GitHub, the other one in GitLab. That's actually a good idea. In fact, I might even do that. That's just an idea I have. It would be good to show you. So I might just add one project in GitLab, but most of it will be in GitHub. Okay. So that's really all. This should be straightforward. You have to know the difference between GitHub and Git. Very different things. All right. Let's move on.